Folks, something serious is taking place in our public schools, something you're going to want to know about, and we're going to talk about that in the second half of the show. But the first half of the show, I want to interview one of our attorneys to discuss a very important case dealing with free speech, First Amendment rights, and it's taking place right now in the capital of California, Sacramento, California. Matt McReynolds, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Brad.
Now, Matt, you're one of our staff attorneys there in our Sacramento office. You're doing a great job. You handle lots of cases, but there's one case in particular that's come up that I want you to talk about because I think many people will be surprised how egregious the attack and the assault on free speech, First Amendment rights is right there in the state capital of California. I understand that it took place at Cal Expo, which is where they have the large state fairs. What happened?
That's right, Brad. Well, we represent a gentleman by the name of Bert Kamenzen, and Bert is an evangelist. And, you know, Brad, from our inception, Pacific Justice Institute has really had a heart for evangelism and evangelists. And Bert is somebody who is not afraid to go into public places and just engage people in conversation, and oftentimes to hand them just a small coin-like object with a scripture reference on it, maybe a gospel tract, and just to get a conversation going about faith, about God, about what matters in life. So that's who we represent in this case.
Now, he doesn't sell anything. He doesn't ask for money. I know some of the cult people will try to do that and trick people and get money from them. He's not doing any of that, and he's not screaming at anyone either, right?
Not at all, Brad. It's just a very non-confrontational approach to evangelism. And, the response from so many people that he engages with, because he loves to do cross-cultural evangelism, to reach out to people from different language groups, different backgrounds, with tracts and gospel coins in their own language. And the response is terrific to that. People love to receive what he is giving them in their own language.
Yeah, and it's good news he's sharing. The gospel is good news. So I can see why it would be very positive. So it's not like there's a lot of people complaining about him, but nonetheless, there was a direct affront to his ability to do this. What happened?
So back just after Thanksgiving of this past year, Brad, our client went to a festival that was being put on there at the state fairgrounds for Hmong New Year's. And this is a festival that he goes to periodically. He's been to a number of these events all around the state. He specifically goes because he wants to engage people cross-culturally, people that he believes God has brought to our shores to hear about the good news of salvation. And so he went to a Hmong New Year's festival. He was passing out tracts and gospel coins, as he does in countless other locations throughout the region. But he was then stopped by law enforcement who told him that he had to leave because he was, quote, soliciting by giving out his free pamphlets, his free coins.
Yeah, okay. So he was, quote, soliciting. He obviously made it very clear, no, I'm not soliciting. I'm not selling anything. I'm not asking for money. I'm not cornering anyone. I'm just giving out things to people, respectful of their culture, positive, good news. Yet that wasn't enough. They decided to continue to press things. So where did it go? I mean, did they back down ever, or is he now in serious trouble because he wants to share the gospel?
Yeah, so Brad, our client was forced to leave the premises.
Wow.
I mean, we've got one of the largest venues that you can think of here in the capital region, specifically designed for this kind of cross-cultural engagement, but closed to the gospel and closed to the sharing of gospel tracts. And what they told him, Brad, was that in order to do that, he would have to submit an application, and he would have to confine himself to a very, very small space within the 350 acres of this property. If you can imagine, Brad, 36 square feet within the 350 acres of the Cal Expo property was all that they said he could operate in, which would completely eliminate his conversational, engaging approach with his fellow citizens.
Yeah, I mean, we're looking at 6 feet by 5 feet. I mean, 6 feet by 6. I mean, that's ridiculous. I mean, the Cal Expo is supposed to be about different events coming in, different cultural events, connecting. California tries to pride itself as being the state for diversity and tolerance, and yet when it comes to someone wanting to share the good news of Jesus, they decide to isolate him in a tiny little box, a little square there in Cal Expo, and they think he's going to just take that and go away. Now, first, let's look at the permitting. Are they valid with regards to this permitting requirement in a traditional public forum? Because my understanding, Matt, is that the case law makes it very clear that traditional public forums, so long as you're dealing with reasonable time, place, and manner, issues, you're free and protected to be able to express yourself without getting a prior nod by the state with a formal permit. Correct?
Yeah, that's absolutely right, Brad. And a couple of things on that. The courts sometimes talk about the state having to provide ample alternative channels for communication. If they're going to close down one type of method or one type of communication, they have to provide ample alternatives for another method. And our basic contention in this case, because we've now filed suit, we're in court, we've just initiated that very, very recently, is that 36 square feet within 350 acres is not an ample alternative channel, and there's no way that you can square those two things. So we feel pretty confident about this case. It's just getting started, so we'll see where things go from here, but we have now filed suit, and this is one of the newest and latest things on our case docket.
Yeah, it's really disturbing to see the fact that law enforcement there in Sacramento was that obstinate to put us in a position where we had to file a lawsuit. Matt, as you know, I mean, the overwhelming majority of the case matters we get involved in, we get resolved without litigation. We don't want to have to sue. We right now have over 40 cases in active litigation, but that's just a tiny fraction of the total number of what we take on in a given year in terms of getting matters resolved. Yet, for some reason, the city of Sacramento did not want to back down on this. Do you have any idea why?
Well, Brad, not just that, but before we went to litigation, as is our practice, we first sent a demand letter to Cal Expo. It was forwarded up the chain to attorneys within the State Department of Justice. So they looked at this. They felt that these restrictions were constitutional, and we just couldn't disagree more. And so from there, the only option left to us was to go to court. Brad, fortunately, here in the Sacramento area, we've had some very good success on similar cases. Several years ago, we had a major case involving an evangelist in a local shopping mall. And so we feel very good about the forum. We feel good about, our theory of the case here.
Yeah, and it's a very important case because I want people to understand that, they may not be wanting to go to Cal Expo and hand out things and evangelize in Cal Expo. But it's actually a much bigger picture than that. What we're talking about is the ability for individuals to be able to share their faith in public places. We're talking about public sidewalks, public parks, and that's really important because if people don't have the ability and the freedom to be able to share their faith, then they're really not allowed to live their faith, because part of Christianity is sharing the good news of Jesus Christ. So we can't really even say we have religious freedom in our country if people don't have the opportunity to be able to share their faith in public places. Sharing their faith doesn't just mean in a church. It means outside the church. I believe that's what our founding fathers intended as well. So this is a very, very important case as we move forward. Matt, I know our client has a great heart, and people we've represented before who are being prosecuted because sharing their faith have great hearts. I defended One recently in El Paso, we got the criminal charges dropped. He was preaching in a public place on a public sidewalk. He's being criminally prosecuted. Another gentleman in San Antonio, Texas, I defended a few months prior to that. He was being criminally prosecuted. We got those charges dropped. But some cases like this are not so beneficial. We have to actually engage on the offense and make sure that this doesn't happen again. And in this case, we're having to defend him in a very important free speech case. What if we don't prevail on this? What are we looking at here?
Well, Brad, this is could send ripple effects all across the region. But you've really hit on this with the public forum issue. You know, if a venue this important can be closed down to speech evangelism, if evangelism can be confined to 36 square feet out of 350 acres, you know, I just hate to think how much that might diminish the opportunity of people to just engage in a casual, conversational way to hear the good news. So, you know, we think this is a big deal, and you know, we're very hopeful and ask people to join us in prayer for the outcome of this case.
Yes, and I agree 100%. We need to be lifting him up in prayer. And folks, if you're listening to this broadcast and you're thinking, yeah, I'm a prayer warrior. Yeah, I like to pray for people in these cases, but you don't know what to pray or necessarily, you don't listen to the show all the time, I encourage you to go to our website, pji.org, P for Pacific, J for Justice, I for Institute.org, or pacificjustice.org, and sign up to get our Legal Insider, where you can be kept up to date on our cases, and you can be praying for these people, like this man who loves Jesus and wants to share the gospel. We're in it together, folks. It's a team, and I never forget that. Our attorneys never forget that. So please go to our website, sign up to get our case updates, and keep our attorneys and our clients in prayer. Matt, thank you for the great job you're doing, and keep it up, and God bless you as you work forward to defend this man sharing the good news of Jesus Christ.
Thanks, Brad.
So my name is Adelmo. I'm 33 years old. I was born and raised in Brazil. Came to America 2 years ago. I've been living here with my wife. Got married 2 years ago. I came to faith in Jesus Christ around 17 years ago. I was living a terrible life in drugs and crime. Praise God, I had people coming and telling me about the faith in Jesus Christ. I understand that when you have something very good, you want to share it with people, especially if it is something that people need. And the gospel is something that people need. November 2015, it was a remarkable date for me. When I was out there preaching, it was in front of a gas station. People didn't like the message and they called the police. The police officer came, and I kept asking him, you know, what law have I broken? What crime have I committed? And he didn't have an answer to my question. He just wanted my ID, and I was trying to make sure that I was going to give him my identification as soon as I understood the crime I was committing. I stood my ground, and he stood his ground, and well, he had the handcuffs, so he put the handcuff on me. You know, it didn't make me afraid or anything. I was actually willing to be arrested if that's what it takes for me to be able to have my faith proclaimed. Even the Lord Jesus Christ himself was arrested for preaching the word that he preached. So I don't expect people to be behaving or treating me any better than what they did with the Lord. When I was arrested, I didn't have any legal representation. They said I was gonna spend 365 days in jail, pay a fine of $1,000, and I was gonna be deported back to Brazil without my wife. And I trusted God that we were gonna win, and praise God, they never prosecuted it, so they dropped the charges 2 days before the trial.
We at the Pacific Justice Institute are handling more and more cases just like Adamos, where people are being victimized because of intolerance because of their faith. We're committed to defending the fundamental civil rights of individuals, and we're sort of unique in that we work hard across America to make sure that no one is ever left on the side of the road. No case is too small for the Pacific Justice Institute. And folks, if you'd like to support the Pacific Justice Institute and become a part of our team, just go to our website. It's pji.org. And in addition to possibly supporting our work on a one-time or a monthly basis, we have wonderful resources there, like opt-out forms and how to protect your kids from being taken by social workers, how to have faith in the workplace, and how to legally share your faith in public schools. Lots of resources right there on our website, pji.org. It's all without charge. All of our work is without charge at Pacific Justice. We're here to serve you. So go to our website and check it out. If you also like to volunteer to help us here at Pacific Justice in one of our many offices, whether it's in Seattle, Salem, Oregon, or one of our California offices, or even outside of California, the West Coast, maybe on the East Coast, give us a call. We'd love to have you become part of our team in that regard as well. Now, we have with us in studio Michael Peffer. He heads up our Southern California office. And he's on the show today because, Michael, there's something outrageous happening in our public schools, something that the people listening to this program are going to be in shock once you mention it. But they need to understand this is not theoretical. This is now coming very practical into California, and we can expect this in other states as well in the not-too-distant future. What is it that is shocking parents throughout the state right now?
Right, Brad. Well, as we have, PGI has been talking about for a long time, this California Healthy Youth Act, which has mandated curriculum, which is positive to homosexuality and transgenders. We've seen this mandated, and we know that we can opt out children from the aspect of it that has to do with sex ed. But then there's the other side, which has to do with social sciences.
Okay.
And PGI has been made aware of part of a curriculum which is being given to young people in this social sciences class, and it has to do with pederasty.
Whoa. Pederasty.
Correct.
What is pederasty?
Well, pederasty has historically been defined as a relationship with an older man and an adolescent boy. And this is, even though the curriculum tends to make this kind of a mentor, quote-unquote, relationship, it's always been homosexual activity. It has always been that.
Right.
And that is discussed in this curriculum in a manner under the guise of the history of homosexuality, that it has always existed, even back in the time of, this is mentioned in Homer's Iliad.
Okay, I want to make sure I got this right. So this pederasty, which is an older male with a young adolescent, with a mentor relationship, this is being taught in the context of homosexuality in terms of historically?
That's correct.
History. So it's really clear exactly what they're trying to push here, what they're trying to, I guess they're trying to teach this as a norm. And yet this is against the law for an adult to have sexual relations with a minor, and yet they're planting this in the minds of our children as an acceptable alternative, acceptable relationship.
That's right. And I think that's the insidious part of this, is that it's one thing to say, well, listen, in the past, people did things wrong. For instance, pederasty. It's another thing to say, Well, this is the history of homosexuality and the underscoring of that, or the underlying message of that, and this is a normal relationship between an adult male and an adolescent boy. And we, of course, know in our society that's illegal conduct, number one, as you just said. And number two, it's conduct that is highly disfavored in our society.
Right.
So the only reason this could be in there in the way that it is presented, and it's definitely in a positive light, is to change the minds of the way young people are thinking about those kinds of relationships. And that is dangerous and insidious.
Oh, it is. It is dangerous. And yet, this is being recommended, this is being proposed, or this is being implemented. Where are we right now?
We receive this as it is a PowerPoint that teachers are given right now, that teachers are given to teach in social sciences with regard to the history of homosexual conduct.
Okay, so this is being given right now to public school teachers. What grade levels are we talking about here? Seniors in high school?
We know at least this is in high school, not just seniors. We know that at least this is in high school.
So 14-year-old boys and girls who are freshmen in high school, this is something that they're going to be presented with and are being presented with. Do we know how many school districts in California have decided to do this, and can they opt out of this particular program?
Well, we don't know how many school districts, but we don't believe this is an aberrant thing. We believe that this is part of the curriculum, and the curriculum is statewide.
Right, and this is statewide. So statewide curriculum requires, as far as history and social studies, that they teach about homosexuality in a purely positive light, only in a positive light.
Correct.
And yet this is being introduced as a tool for them to utilize to be in compliance with this curriculum mandate.
That's correct.
Okay, what about charter schools? Charter schools, I mean, a lot of parents have their kids in charter schools in California because they can't, maybe there's only one parent, but whatever, they can't homeschool or they can't put their kids in a private school. So they've looked to charter schools. Are charter schools safe from this, or are they subject to this mandate and this curriculum as well?
A lot of parents don't understand that there is a lot of positive things to say about charter schools, no question about it. But make no mistake, charter schools have to follow the same laws and regulations as do any other public school. That's the requirement. So this is not something that that the charter school can not do this. At least if their school district requires this, if the school district under which the charter school falls requires this, then it requires it of charter schools as well.
Wow. So I know some charter schools are like homeschool charter school programs, or they're hybrid homeschool charter school program. In those situations, I'd like to think, if they're giving the material to the parents and saying, okay, parents, your child is supposed to be instructed with this, check it off, let us know if you've done it. And some parents could say, yes, yes, it's been done, but it hasn't. However, most of these programs are online. So even parents who have their kids in charter schools and say, well, I'll be watching for it, it's online.
That's right.
So what can parents do if they're in a charter school or in a public school for that matter? Do they have a right to contact their school district and say, hey, I want to know if this is what's being done here. I want to know if this is being implemented. I want to know what's in the social studies. I want to know what's in the history program. Do they have a right to view all that curriculum? And does the school district have a right to make it reasonably accommodative to let them do so? Because I've heard of some school districts say, yeah, you can come at 10:30 when you're at work. Right. What are the boundaries here, and what are the rights of parents?
So I think that the important thing that parents need to know, and maybe this is a wake-up call that we've all needed, it's hard. It's hard to be a parent, and there's so many things screaming at you, but this is one where the parents not only have the right but the duty to go there and insist that they understand the breadth of this curriculum. The law says you cannot opt your child out of this social sciences / history, but the parents can be aware of this. And we believe that the school district has a duty to make it available on a reasonable basis. But we think it's time to step up. There's organizations that they need to be involved with. We have been working with an organization called Informed Parents of California. They're
Yes.
doing good work. They're mobilizing parents. But it's time to storm the gates, folks. I mean, it really is. We have to know. We have to convince the administration of these schools that parents aren't going to stand for this.
Right.
We've also heard of movements that are afoot regarding sick out days where parents hold their children out, and
On their own.
on their own basis.
Okay.
And maybe en masse as well. That parents with these organizations. And
Is there a certain time they have the sick out day? Is it the day of the sex ed, or is it sort of an orchestrated event that people can find out? When is the sick out day? When are we making our voice heard? By going to a certain website, for example,
I think it's both. I think that the sick out days may be the day when they're going to teach this kind of garbage.
Right.
And parents make that call for themselves. There's also mass organized days, which can find out from various media, Christian media largely. But Pacific Justice Institute will represent people if the school district harasses them for truancy, because we believe that this kind of protest is not. It's something that can be a tool in the toolbox of parents trying to deal with what is being shoved down their throats.
Right.
And this is, school districts need to sit up and take notice that
Right.
this kind of thing, teaching that this conduct of pederasty and other conducts like it are not acceptable. They're not neutral.
right.
They're wrong.
And I think it's important for us to make very clear. Bullying is terrible in schools. Efforts of school districts and schools to prevent bullying of kids for any reason of any kind, including because of their faith.
That's right.
Not just because of their gender identity dysphoria or sexual orientation, but also because of their faith. Yes, fight bullying. But we're not talking here about programs narrowly tailored to oppose bullying of kids, because that's a real problem. We're talking here about major indoctrination that is going to be impacting children in very serious ways with regards to decisions that they make based on feelings that they have at that time. This is very, very serious. It's indoctrinating, and parents need to be aware of this. Now is the time to wake up. If you have your child in a public school of any kind, be aware. If you have your child in a private school, there's some private schools implementing curriculum like this. And you need to be aware of that as well. Just because they have a cross in front of their school doesn't mean they're not giving into this curriculum as well. But we don't legally advise anyone to break the law at all. That's very clear. But if parents do feel called to opt their child out of something, if parents have a sit-in and participate in a sit-in, we at Pacific Justice are here to serve them and represent them without charge. And
right.
Michael, keep up your great work. And I want people to be praying for you and the work of Pacific Justice Institute as we move ahead. So, folks, there we have it. It's our God-given freedoms we're talking about here. Now, let's choose to keep them. I'm Brad Dacus of the Pacific Justice Institute. Have a great weekend.